In the age of YouTube, some content creators push boundaries for that perfect viral moment. But sometimes, what should have been just another upload becomes something far more tragic. In this video, we're examining 6 YouTubers who filmed their last moments, each chasing content that would cost them everything. It was November 17, 2014. The abandoned Bucharest office tower stood like a concrete tombstone against the gray Romanian sky, its broken windows staring blindly over the city. Mihai Popa adjusted his headlamp and checked his camera battery one final time before approaching the building's service entrance, unaware that his small urban exploration hobby would end in the building's darkest corner. Mihai worked night security at a logistics warehouse, spending his days sleeping and his evenings filming abandoned buildings for his modest channel. Unlike other urban explorers who broke locks or damaged property, Mihai prided himself on finding natural entry points and documenting hidden access routes that others missed. His background was purely civilian. No construction experience, no engineering knowledge, just curiosity and a cheap camera. He had successfully explored dozens of stairwells, rooftops, and empty factories around Bucharest, building a small but dedicated following who appreciated his respectful approach to abandoned spaces. Urban exploration requires navigating structures never intended for public access, often in complete darkness through buildings where safety systems have failed and maintenance stopped years earlier. Explorers rely on flashlights, sturdy footwear, and careful movement through environments where floor panels may be missing, electrical hazards exist, and structural integrity is compromised. Mihai's equipment was basic: a headlamp, handheld camera, and work boots from his security job. He had no safety gear, rope, or emergency communication devices that experienced explorers typically carry. That evening, Mihai entered the tower through a service door broken open by squatters, the building's power completely cut for over 2 years. His camera captured the pitch-black interior as he navigated by headlamp, stepping carefully around missing floor panels and open utility holes. He had heard from fellow security guards about a staff-only shortcut that supposedly led directly to the roof, bypassing the main stairwells. The rumor had circulated among warehouse workers for months, though none had actually verified its existence. Mihai spent 40 minutes searching for this mythical shortcut, his camera recording his growing frustration as he encountered dead ends and blocked passages. His headlamp briefly illuminated thick cables running vertically through the building's core, which he mistook for water pipes as he moved deeper into the building. The building's layout confused him. Doors opened to unexpected spaces, and the darkness made spatial orientation nearly impossible. At around 10 p.m., Mihai approached what appeared to be a standard doorway, likely assuming it led to a stair landing based on the building's symmetrical design. His camera captured him confidently stepping forward, explaining that he had finally found the access route. The doorway opened directly into an open elevator shaft, the doors removed during demolition years earlier. Mihai took a full step into empty air and fell several floors. The audio recorded a burst of rushing wind and clipped, distorted noise as he fell 11 stories, about 120 feet down the shaft, followed by a chaotic impact as his body struck the bottom. A squatter discovered Mihai's body the following morning and contacted police. Emergency responders required specialized equipment to extract him from the shaft bottom. The medical examiner determined that massive blunt force trauma caused immediate death. His skull fractured on impact, his spine catastrophically failed at ground contact, and internal organs ruptured from sudden deceleration. Mihai's family was shown controlled excerpts of the recovered footage by investigators, after which they removed his YouTube channel. Fellow warehouse workers later admitted the staff shortcut was entirely fictional, a persistent rumor with no basis in reality. It was January 22, 2016. The Atlantic swells hammered Portugal's coast with relentless fury, sending massive waves crashing against Nazare's famous jetty. Luis Fernando Ferreira, a 31-year-old dock worker from nearby Leiria, stood at the concrete barrier with his handheld camera, watching the churning water. Luis wasn't a professional content creator or extreme sports athlete. He worked loading cargo ships at the port of Leiria, earning modest wages to support his girlfriend and their 2 young children. During winter storm seasons, he'd drive to Nazare on weekends to film what he called scale videos, standing near massive waves to show their true size using his body for reference. His YouTube channel had barely 200 subscribers, but he believed viral content might change his family's financial situation. He had no ocean safety training and never wore flotation gear, believing his proximity to the jetty provided adequate safety. Nazaret's underwater canyon creates some of the world's largest waves, with swells regularly exceeding 60 feet during winter storms. The jetty extends nearly 1,640 feet into the Atlantic, offering spectacular views, but exposing visitors to massive wave sets that can surge unpredictably over the concrete barriers. That morning, local authorities had posted storm warnings throughout the area, advising residents to avoid coastal exposure. Other people on the jetty said that Luis arrived at around noon, ignoring the posted advisories and dismissing concerns from local fishermen who were securing their boats. He'd filmed similar conditions before without incident, likely developing dangerous overconfidence in his ability to time the wave sets. Luis positioned himself halfway along the jetty, approximately 820 feet from shore. He'd observed the wave patterns for 20 minutes, noting consistent sets arriving every 12 to 15 minutes. Between sets, smaller waves crashed harmlessly against the lower jetty walls. Luis timed his filming during these calmer intervals, stepping closer to the edge for better camera angles. Local residents began retreating from the jetty as conditions worsened, but they said that Luis remained focused on his camera screen. An hour later, disaster struck without warning. An unusually large outlier wave within a powerful set, significantly larger than the previous waves, surged over the jetty with devastating force. The wall of water lifted Luis completely off his feet, slamming him sideways into the concrete barrier with bone-crushing impact. Witnesses from shore watched in horror as his head struck the jetty edge, his neck and upper body forced violently backward by the impact. His camera plunged underwater, capturing chaotic, low-visibility footage. The massive wave dragged Luis's unconscious body against the rough concrete for several seconds before pulling him into the churning Atlantic. 3 fishermen who witnessed the accident immediately called emergency services, but the violent conditions prevented immediate rescue attempts. Maritime police arrived within 20 minutes, but Luis had already disappeared beneath the surface. His body was recovered by divers 4 hours later, approximately 330 feet from the jetty. The coroner's report confirmed severe skull fractures from the concrete impact, with water found in his lungs indicating drowning. Multiple broken ribs and crushed fingers showed the brutal force of being slammed against the jetty. Luis's camera was recovered by divers 3 days later, its electronics irreparably damaged by saltwater exposure, but its memory card intact, containing the final moments of his life. After the tragedy, Luis's partner, Mariana, struggled to care for their 2 children alone while dealing with the sudden loss. The footage was never publicly released, remaining with Portuguese authorities as evidence. It was August 3rd, 2017. The afternoon heat in Argentina's Pampas region had reached 38 degrees Celsius, causing the cattle at a nearby farm to cluster restlessly in whatever shade they could find. Diego Morales, a 29-year-old rancher, wiped sweat from his forehead as he positioned his camera on the fence rail, preparing to film another episode for his agricultural YouTube channel that had gained modest popularity among small-scale farmers. Diego had grown up on his family's modest cattle operation, learning traditional handling methods from his father and grandfather. After inheriting the ranch 3 years earlier, he'd started documenting cost-saving techniques and labor shortcuts that appealed to budget-conscious farmers across South America. His channel attracted viewers seeking practical advice for managing livestock without expensive equipment or hired help. Working with cattle means knowing how they behave, having the right pens and gates, and following safety rules. Handlers move animals weighing up to 1,200 pounds through narrow chutes and gates, using pressure points in their natural flight zones, while keeping clear escape paths and avoiding blind spots where panicked cows can seriously injure or kill someone. Diego tended to focus on speed and getting the job done rather than sticking to safety rules, often demonstrating techniques that experienced ranchers would consider reckless. His confidence, built from years working with mostly calm cattle, made him underestimate how dangerous stressed animals could be. That afternoon, Diego planned to demonstrate calming techniques for agitated cattle during extreme heat. The local veterinary service had issued advisories about livestock stress during the ongoing heat wave, recommending minimal handling until temperatures dropped. The cattle were visibly distressed, bunching together and showing signs of heat exhaustion. Diego entered the narrow handling chute to position himself for the demonstration. dismissing concerns from 2 ranch workers about the cattle's agitated state. The chute's gate latch was visibly bent and corroded, requiring extra force to secure properly. He waved off suggestions to postpone filming, relying on years of experience handling cattle and his confidence in understanding their behavior. The metal chute amplified the heat, and the confined cattle became increasingly agitated as Diego moved among them. His camera captured their heavy breathing and nervous movements as he attempted to demonstrate his calming technique. The bent gate latch, weakened by years of use and recent stress, began to give way under pressure from the restless animals. A 1,100-pound steer surged forward in panic, forcing the compromised gate open with explosive force. Diego was immediately knocked to the ground as the animal burst through, followed by 6 more cattle trampling over him in their desperate escape. Despite the sequence of trampling lasting only a few seconds, heavy hooves struck his chest and head repeatedly as he moved against the ground beneath the animals. The camera continued recording the partially obscured struggle, though much of it was blocked or jostled by the animals and dirt, making details difficult to discern. Ranch workers attempted to divert the remaining cattle, but Diego remained pinned under the animals. When the last steer finally passed, workers immediately pulled his motionless body from the chute. One worker called emergency services, while the other attempted basic first aid. The nearest hospital was 45 minutes away, and the ambulance didn't arrive until 40 minutes later. Diego had already succumbed to his injuries by the time workers extracted him from the chute. The autopsy revealed massive blunt force trauma as the cause of death. His chest cavity had been crushed, causing both lungs to collapse and preventing breathing. His liver had ruptured completely, resulting in fatal internal bleeding that would have killed him within minutes, even with immediate medical attention. Police confiscated the footage as evidence for their investigation into workplace safety violations. Diego's father dismantled the entire chute system the following week, unable to bear seeing the location where his son died. It was May 14, 2013. The afternoon air in Germany's Ruhr Valley carried the faint ozone smell that always lingered near the regional electrical substation, where massive transformers hummed quietly behind chain-link fencing. Tobias Engel, a 26-year-old electronics store clerk, stood at the perimeter holding his camera, watching his new quadcopter drone disappear behind the warning signs after clipping a transmission cable during what should have been a routine test flight. Tobias had been flying drones for 8 months, documenting his flights for a small YouTube channel focused on consumer electronics reviews. His day job at a regional electronics retailer gave him access to the latest drone technology, and he'd built a modest following among hobbyists interested in practical flight demonstrations. Electrical substations contain high-voltage equipment operating at thousands of volts, where transformers, switches, and transmission lines create invisible electrical fields capable of generating fatal arcs across several feet of air, requiring specialized training and protective equipment for any personnel access, with multiple redundant safety systems designed to prevent unauthorized entry into energized zones. That afternoon, Tobias was testing his drone's stability in windy conditions when it clipped a guy wire and crashed inside the substation's restricted area. Multiple warning signs in German and English clearly marked the area as extremely dangerous. Tobias positioned his handheld camera to document the recovery process, continuing to record the incident for his YouTube channel. He climbed the 8-foot chain-link fence despite clear prohibition signs. His camera captured him landing inside the restricted perimeter and moving among the industrial equipment while searching for his crashed drone. The substation's gravel surface was specifically designed to provide electrical insulation, but Tobias walked directly toward the high-voltage equipment without understanding the invisible danger zones surrounding energized components. His camera recorded the low humming sound of transformers and the crackling of electrical equipment as he moved deeper into the restricted area, following the path where his drone had fallen. And then disaster struck. Tobias stepped into the transformer's energized clearance zone near exposed high-voltage hardware. Without making physical contact, a sudden electrical arc bridged the air gap, creating a blinding flash that engulfed his upper body. The plasma reached extremely high temperatures capable of melting synthetic fibers in seconds, and his synthetic clothing began to char and ignite locally. He collapsed immediately as the electrical surge coursed through his body, causing cardiac arrest within seconds. The electrical arc had triggered automatic safety systems, but the damage was already complete. Security cameras later confirmed that no direct contact with equipment had occurred, and investigators determined the fatal injury resulted from an electrical arc within the energized clearance zone. A substation technician monitoring the facility's control room detected the fault at 2:35 in the afternoon and immediately called emergency services while activating lockout procedures. Paramedics arrived 18 minutes later, but were unable to enter the energized area until electrical crews confirmed complete power isolation 45 minutes after the incident. The autopsy revealed that electrical injury had caused immediate cardiac arrest. The massive electrical current had disrupted his heart's normal rhythm instantly, causing death within seconds. Severe electrical burns and charring covered his face and torso, though death occurred before these burns could cause further suffering. Authorities confiscated all footage as evidence for their investigation into unauthorized substation access. The incident became an anonymous cautionary tale in drone hobbyist forums, though specific details were never publicly released. It was September 6, 2018. The late afternoon heat in rural Queensland hung heavy around the corrugated iron shed behind Aaron Carey's property, where he'd set up his camera equipment to film another snake handling demonstration. The eastern brown snake coiled restlessly in the plastic container beside him, its dark eyes tracking his movements as he adjusted the lighting for what would become his final educational video. Aaron had worked in pest control for 15 years, building a reputation for removing venomous snakes from residential properties across the region. The 38-year-old had a YouTube channel focused on teaching homeowners basic snake identification and safety protocols. Aaron's confidence came from years of successful removals, though his formal training was limited to a basic wildlife handling course completed a decade earlier. Snake handling requires specialized equipment, including bite-proof gloves, face shields, and proper restraint tools, where handlers must control animals capable of delivering potentially fatal venom through fangs that can penetrate most protective materials, requiring constant awareness of strike zones and defensive behaviors that can change instantly based on stress levels and environmental factors. Aaron's approach emphasized appearing calm and authoritative to reassure viewers, often minimizing visible safety precautions to avoid seeming overly cautious. His experience with smaller, less aggressive species had likely created overconfidence when dealing with Australia's most dangerous snakes. That afternoon, Aaron planned to demonstrate proper grip techniques using an adult eastern brown snake, one of the world's most venomous species. Aaron positioned the camera to capture his handling technique, focusing on demonstrating safety protocols. The eastern brown snake, measuring nearly 6 feet long, showed clear signs of stress in the confined space. Aaron wore only basic work gloves and safety glasses, without additional facial protection. His family could be heard in the background, preparing dinner just 30 meters away in the main house. The snake remained relatively calm as Aaron lifted it from the container, demonstrating what he considered proper support techniques. As he adjusted his grip to better display the animal for the camera, the movement triggered the snake's defensive response. This movement triggered the snake's defensive response, and Aaron failed to recognize the subtle body language indicating an imminent strike. The eastern brown snake struck upward with lightning speed, its fangs penetrating Aaron's left cheek just below his safety glasses. Aaron immediately dropped the snake and stumbled backward after the strike. There was little immediate swelling at the bite site, but thin streams of blood trickled down his face from the puncture marks. His wife came to check on him when she heard him scream. She called emergency services immediately. Within minutes, observers noted rapid physical deterioration, including loss of coordination and increasing distress. Within the first 10 minutes, his condition worsened as venom-induced clotting abnormalities began to develop. Paramedics arrived 20 minutes later, but Aaron was barely breathing and unresponsive. Critical envenomation effects, including severe clotting disruption and cardiovascular instability, had progressed too far for immediate field treatment to reverse. His arrival at the hospital showed him unresponsive, and anti-venom administration was unable to prevent death. He succumbed approximately 2 hours after the bite. The autopsy revealed widespread effects on his blood's clotting mechanisms and heart function. Although respiratory function was initially present, profound cardiovascular collapse occurred before anti-venom could be administered, leading to cardiac arrest. Aaron's partner removed all his videos from social media platforms within days of the incident. It was February 9, 2015. The outskirts of Riga, Latvia, lay under a blanket of fresh snow that had fallen steadily for 3 days. Artis Kalnins, a 34-year-old former refrigeration technician turned urban explorer, stood outside an abandoned ice hockey rink, adjusting his helmet camera. Artis had built a modest following documenting Latvia's decaying Soviet-era infrastructure for his YouTube channel. His background in refrigeration systems gave him credibility when explaining how these massive buildings once functioned, though his technical knowledge was limited to cooling equipment rather than structural engineering. He specialized in abandoned ice rinks and cold storage facilities, drawn by nostalgia for his former profession. Urban exploration involves entering abandoned structures to document their deterioration, requiring careful assessment of structural integrity, environmental hazards like asbestos or unstable floors, and potential legal consequences, where explorers must balance historical documentation with personal safety in buildings never intended for public access after abandonment. That morning, Artis had received pressure from his gear sponsor to produce content featuring their new winter exploration equipment. The company wanted footage from challenging locations to demonstrate their product's durability. Recent snowfall had created perfect conditions for dramatic visuals, and Artis felt compelled to deliver despite obvious structural concerns. Inside the complex, Artis immediately noticed the severely deformed roof structure. Steel trusses had buckled under years of neglect and the recent heavy snowfall. His camera captured him moving beneath the obvious sagging while dismissing the danger through his actions, treating the steel framework as if it could handle additional stress. He walked directly beneath the most compromised section, continuing to film the layout of the former refrigeration systems. The building's deteriorated condition was evident everywhere. Rust had eaten through critical support connections, and the roof membrane had failed years earlier, allowing snow to accumulate directly on structural elements. Artis's footage showed falling debris and audible creaking sounds as he moved deeper into the facility, yet he continued filming the building's original purpose. Suddenly, the roof failed catastrophically. A massive section of snow, insulation, and twisted steel beams crashed down directly onto Artis. The autopsy later determined that the initial impact struck him across the shoulders, folding his body forward violently. Some secondary structural elements shifted and collapsed shortly afterward, crushing his lower torso and pinning him beneath tons of debris. His helmet camera continued recording brief glimpses of his movements and distorted audio of strained, irregular breathing sounds. Though much of the lens was obscured by debris and crushed immediately in places, the crushing weight prevented his chest from expanding, making breathing impossible. Within seconds, his movement ceased entirely. A security guard from a nearby facility heard the collapse and called emergency services at 2:52 in the afternoon. Rescue teams arrived within 20 minutes, but required specialized equipment to safely remove the debris. Recovery operations took 4 hours due to the unstable remaining structure. The autopsy revealed compressive asphyxia as the cause of death. His chest cavity had been completely crushed, preventing lung expansion and causing immediate respiratory failure. His pelvis was shattered, resulting in massive internal bleeding that would have been fatal even without the chest injuries. The footage sparked intense debate about urban exploration safety before Artis's wife requested its removal. The building was demolished 6 months later after the city deemed it a public hazard. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.